Hello friends, today is May 12th, 2026, and we're breaking down the current picture on the front. But before we get to the map itself, a few words about what's happening around the conflict more broadly. Over the past few days, from every direction, European capitals, Washington, Moscow and Kyiv, talk of negotiations has been growing louder. And not in backrooms or through diplomatic hints, but openly. Something appears to have genuinely shifted. How serious it is remains to be seen, but the background noise can no longer be ignored. Against this backdrop, a piece of news emerged from Ukraine that immediately drew widespread attention. NABU and SAP announced the uncovering of a large-scale corruption scheme, specifically the laundering of hundreds of millions of hryvnias through elite real estate construction in the suburbs of Kyiv. What makes it particularly striking is that among those named in the case is former head of the presidential office Yermak. The story has generated significant discussion both inside Ukraine and abroad. Whether this represents a genuine anti-corruption effort or something else entirely is a separate and interesting question. But the timing is hard to ignore. This scandal surfaced at precisely the moment when negotiations dominate the agenda. All right, let's go to the map. Hulai Pole direction. There are both confirmed changes and unconfirmed reports here. Let's go through them in order. Starting with the area north of Lvivske. Yesterday we noted that Russian forces were expanding their zone of control in this area. Today that expansion is confirmed. The entire territory north of Lvivske has passed under Russian control. We mark this as a confirmed change. Simultaneously, the advance toward Chernihiv, coming from the direction of Myrn, continues. A confirmed westward expansion from Myrn has also been recorded. Several sources report that Russian forces have now closed right up to Chernihiv, and that fighting has already broken out there. This remains a report rather than a confirmed change. Corroborating material has not yet come through. That said, given that verified data always arrives with a delay, it's entirely plausible that the battle for this settlement is already underway as we speak. Hulai Pole remains under AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, control. The situation around Novosilkivka remains unclear. Whether Russian forces are holding the eastern outskirts of that settlement or have pulled back is an open question. Nothing conclusive has come in either direction. As soon as something concrete emerges, I'll report it. Verkhnya Tersa and surrounding area. Both confirmed changes and unconfirmed reports are coming in from this area today. On the reports side, Russian sources claim that the majority of Verkhnya Tersa has already passed under Russian control. For now, this is a report. There is no cartographic confirmation. What is confirmed, Russian forces have advanced from Krynikne all the way to Verkhnya Tersa, and that entire stretch is now under their control. Earlier positions were closer to Krynikne, then came a roughly 600-meter advance, and now another expansion is being recorded. There are also reports of movement toward Vozdvizhivka. Some sources write of an active assault on this settlement, but the sources in question are not authoritative enough to treat that as reliable. What can be said with more confidence? Russian forces have advanced approximately 2.5 kilometers toward Vozdvizhivka relative to their previous forward positions. No further confirmed expansion beyond that has been recorded. Sloviansk direction changes and reports here as well. From the area of Fedorivka Druha and Dibrova, there are accounts of Ukrainian forces attempting to counterattack. However, several sources clarify that what's being described as counterattacks appears to be FPV drone strikes against Russian positions rather than infantry assault operations. It's difficult to draw a clean line between the two based on available data, so we simply note AFU activity in this area is present. From Rai-Oleksandrivka, video footage came in today. The description indicates a Russian infantry unit carried out an assault, a storm group cleared AFU positions on the approaches to the settlement, and the advance along the Lipivka, Rai-Oleksandrivka road exceeded 1.5 kilometers. The entire territory covered is now marked as having passed under Russian control. There had previously been repeated reports of Russian forces entering Rai-Oleksandrivka itself from the eastern and northeastern sides. I reported those in earlier episodes explicitly as unconfirmed reports. Confirmation of control over the settlement itself has still not come through. Luhansk Oblast, Kharkivka, Petrivska. Area. Yesterday we noted video material appearing from Sverdlivka and Nadia. Today footage has emerged from Kharkivka, a settlement that various sources also refer to as Petrivska. The picture here is mixed. Russian sources report positional fighting in the Borova area and shelling of AFU positions near Petrivska. Ukrainian forces, meanwhile, appear to have recovered part of previously lost ground to the east of the settlement, an advance of around 600 meters. The footage from Kharkivka confirms AFU presence there, and the settlement is accordingly marked as being under their control. This is a significant detail for the overall picture in Luhansk Oblast. We have spoken before about how it's premature to talk of complete Russian control over this region. Until Novoserhivka, Stepov, and Druzhelyubivka pass under Russian control, Ukrainian forces retain a presence on this territory, and today's data confirms that. Vovchansk direction reports are coming in from the Vovchansk direction of active fighting along the entire line of contact. Russian forces have reportedly consolidated in the area of Shesterivka and Losivka. Several sources describe assault operations at these settlements, but a caveat is needed. For roughly a week now, reports have been circulating of Russian movement from Simonivka toward Shesterivka and Losivka, yet no confirmed changes have been recorded on the map. Cartographically, this direction has not shifted. There are also reports of Ukrainian attempts to push Russian forces back in Staritsia. Recall that footage of a captured mercenary from this area appeared once before. The same pattern now appears to be repeating. By all indications, mercenary fighters have again been deployed there. Activity at this point is definite. The summer campaign, criteria for success and failure. One of the subscribers raised a question I've been wanting to address in detail for some time. What precisely will count as success in the summer campaign? And what will count as failure? Let's go through the directions and try to give honest answers, without excessive optimism and without unnecessary drama. Zaporizhzhia direction. This is arguably the most difficult stretch of the front for the Russian side right now. AFU have concentrated enormous resources here. Under these conditions, simply holding the current positions in the area of Stepnohirsk, Plavny, Primorske, and preventing AFU from pushing Russian forces back to the river, let alone across it, will already count as success. Russian fighters are digging in, and that matters. If the positions are lost, that's a failure, full stop. Orikhiv direction. The picture here is different. A good outcome would be reaching Orikhiv from the northeast and entering the city. Taking Orikhiv within the summer campaign would be an excellent result, perhaps at the outer edge of realistic expectations. Personally, I think Russian forces will enter the city before summer is out. If they don't, this particular direction goes in the failure column. Worth noting, the current priority here is not enemy equipment, but enemy manpower. And judging by the available material, that priority is being pursued with considerable effectiveness. Dobropilya direction. This is more complicated. Russian forces are reportedly concentrating significant strength here. Both Sersky and sources on the ground say as much. The question is whether taking Dobropilya in the remaining 3 to 4 months is realistic. In theory, yes. In practice, I'm measured in my expectations. 3 defensive lines, everything dug in and fortified. These are not conditions that invite optimism. What would I personally consider a good result here? If the flanks are built out, from the east, Kutuzivka, Rubezhne, Zolotie, Kolodiaz, and the cutting of the Kramatorsk, Dobropilya Road. From the west, the village cluster of Vasilivka and Yuriivka. If the northern village cluster of Dobropilya Krivorichtia is taken and a link is established toward Virivka, and if Russian forces begin filtering into the city itself, that would represent serious groundwork done. For those expecting the fall to bring the capture of Dobropilya, Bilozerske, and a breakthrough somewhere toward Novodonetsk, I understand why those forecasts are appealing, but one has to think realistically. Kostiantinivka direction. The criteria are straightforward. Kostiantinivka taken. The summer campaign went well. Kostiantinivka taken. Alexievo-Druzhkivka taken. Entry into Druzhkivka begun. Excellent. Kostiantynivka still in AFU hands come autumn. Failure. Sloviansk direction. I'm leaving Kramatorsk out of this framework. No one is planning an assault from the east there. For Sloviansk, if both Rai-Oleksandrivka and Mykolaiivka are taken, an outstanding result. If Rai-Oleksandrivka is taken and the assault on Mykolaiivka is underway, a good result. As for entering Sloviansk itself, theoretically it's not out of the question even within the summer campaign. But practically, no one is going to spread forces thin for the sake of a media moment. Mykolaiivka is the real objective on this axis. Sloviansk is an autumn-winter proposition. Lyman direction. Entirely straightforward. Lyman taken, good result. Not taken, failure. Kharkiv Oblast. A secondary direction in my view, even though Army Group North is currently posting impressive rates of advance. No large-scale strategic objectives are being pursued here. A good result would be clearing the left bank of the Oskil, at least along the Kupiansk section, not counting the Borova section. Failing that, the task is unaccomplished. Sumy Oblast. Failure here is almost definitionally impossible. If Russian forces continue improving their positions at even the pace of the past 2 months, that's already an excellent outcome. The only scenario that could be called a failure would be losing existing positions with nothing gained in return. That scenario doesn't look realistic. To summarize, what will a successful summer campaign look like overall? Putting it all together, entry into Orikhiv, flanks built out and movement into Dobropilya begun, Kostiantynivka and Alexeyevo-Druzhkivka taken, entry into Mykolaiivka, Lyman taken, and the left bank of the Oskil cleared along the Kupiansk section. That's a good result, an outstanding outcome, if all of that plus something beyond it is achieved. A partial success, if part of it is. A complete failure, if almost none of it materializes. But honestly, I consider that last scenario extremely unlikely. For that to happen, the front would simply have to freeze solid. I'm more than confident we won't see that kind of summer. The Strait of Hormuz. The pressure keeps building. While Europe debates a Ukrainian settlement, a crisis is unfolding at the other end of the geopolitical map. One that is hitting the global economy just as hard as any land war. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow choke point through which roughly 27% of the world's seaborne oil exports and a fifth of global LNG passed in peacetime, has been effectively blocked for over 2 months now. A quick recap of how we got here. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a massive air campaign against Iran, in the course of which Supreme Leader Khamenei was killed. Tehran responded with missile strikes against Israel, US bases across the Gulf, and infrastructure in the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. On March 4th, Iran officially declared the strait closed. The IRGC began attacking vessels attempting to transit and reportedly started laying naval mines in the shipping lanes. Traffic through the strait collapsed by more than 90%. A ceasefire was announced on April 7-8. The strait, however, did not reopen. On April 13th, the United States introduced a counter-blockade of Iranian ports. Since then, both sides have been walking a razor's edge. According to the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, since the ceasefire came into effect, Iran has attacked commercial vessels 9 times and seized 2 container ships. On May 8th, a direct exchange of fire occurred. US destroyers and Iranian forces opened up on each other in the strait. Trump continues to insist the ceasefire remains technically intact. Tehran takes the opposite view. Pakistan-mediated negotiations are ongoing, but have so far produced nothing. Trump declared Iran's latest proposal totally unacceptable, while Tehran responded by vowing it would never bow. Beijing hosted Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi and called for a diplomatic resolution, but shows little sign of applying genuine pressure on Tehran, particularly given that in April, China and Russia jointly vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for freedom of navigation to be restored. The consequences for energy markets are direct and immediate. WTI is now trading above $100 a barrel, Brent around 106. More than 1,550 vessels carrying some 22,500 crew members remain trapped in and around the strait. The situation is extremely tense, and neither side is showing any real willingness to make meaningful concessions. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel. Have a good day.